Hello. Yeah, is it on? Yeah, right? Okay, awesome. Today I would like to talk with you about sustainability and games. So on the one hand, this presentation will focus on the compliance side. That means what kind of regulations are coming up in the European Union, which will also affect game studios. So I will talk a lot about compliance. Before I do that, I also would like to talk about responsibility and growing up, because so the games industry has grown a lot. The problem is that many people, the management team still behaves like they are in the kindergarten. They make a lot of money, they reach so many people, but taking responsibility means also building values and grow your business sustainably. And that means that you, of course, have to take care of your people, you have to take care of your business, but it also means that you have to take care of the planet and resources which you have. So when going through this presentation, please keep that in mind, because when we look at sustainability and the games industry, actually we are really at the start when it comes to taking the responsibility. Other industries, like the movie industry, are way further. So they have defined already standards and have thought about this topic. But like in the games industry, we still pretend we are not political. We still pretend that we are just doing games, besides being so huge. So yeah. And also feel free to ask questions in between. We are quite a small group, so maybe to also introduce myself, I'm Maria Wagner. I'm the managing director of the Sustainable Games Alliance. Who are we? We are a non-profit cooperative. We are like built from the industry, so we have like a lot of game studios as our members, and also local associations joining us. And our goal is to decarbonize the games industry. We are backed by people like David Helgason, the founder of Unity, or Petri Järveletto, the co-founder of Remedy. We are a team of made of scientists and the industry, which is very important to us. So everything what we say is not something we just thought ourselves. It's backed by science, which is very important when we talk about this topic. This is our core team. Ricardo's already introduced Jiri. He's one of the co-founders of the Sustainable Games Alliance. And what is important there is that it is an industry effort, because we need actionable efforts when it comes to this topic. It needs to be actionable for the games industry, for the developers and people leading it. Because many times we want to change something, but we don't do it strategically. We just make something to feel good. But the problem is we need numbers and we need to find a way to work on this topic way more strategically. So what we do as the Sustainable Games Alliance, we are at the moment developing a global standard to have comparable numbers and to have something. So we have a baseline to find out, is what we are doing really effective when it comes to decarbonizing the games industry, or is it just something what makes us feel good, like, for example, recycling, which is great, but if you look at the numbers, it doesn't really make sense to put all your efforts just into recycling. And also what we do is backed by and checked by an advisory board, which is very important. So there are scientists checking our numbers and our approaches, which is very important. And now I would like to come to the point. Okay, what is the industry footprint? At the moment, we don't really know, because we don't have numbers. Everyone at the moment is just publishing some numbers, but there is no baseline, no methodology. So we actually don't know. We have, like our team estimated that at the moment, the global footprint of the games industry is around 50 million up to 100 million tons. That means it's in the range of the country of Sweden or Norway when it comes to a footprint. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So CO2, like 50 million to 100 million CO2, which is huge. Because like many times people think, okay, we are a digital industry, so it doesn't really matter. The problem is our games, which is also great, are played by a lot of people, and this adds up. But as said, at the moment we don't know it. The good thing is, and maybe also the worrying thing for many people who need to take care of compliance, the European Union wants to know your footprint, and they care about it if you don't do. That's why they released a bunch of new regulations, which you can see. Usually we talk about this, the alphabet soup of the sustainability European regulations. So what does it mean concretely? So we have on the one hand the empowering consumers for the green transition. This is a regulation. Then the Green Claims Directive. These basically will regulate how you can communicate green actions. Yeah. So like every time when you do something good, or you want to do something good for the planet or the people, it is really important how you talk about it. Because in the future you will need to back it up with like scientific evidence. So you cannot just go out and say, oh, I'm net zero now, or just by implementing something in your game where people can donate. You cannot say, oh, we done something really great for the planet without saying specifically what have you done and backing it up with numbers. And what also will be really, really hard in the future is to make any green claims by reducing your footprint with carbon offsets. So, because like at the moment, many times companies continue polluting the planet, then they buy cheap carbon offsets, and then they say, oh, I'm net zero. So this is something which will be like really, really hard in the future, which is good, and which of course will force the companies to look at their value chain and think, okay, what is like really helping the planet? Because it will be for the companies which are doing something good and are able to communicate it in the way how it should be, it will be like a benefit, like a marketing benefit. And the other way around is if you lie to your customers, and even if you don't really attempt to greenwash, but if you don't educate yourself on this topic and say something wrong, that might affect your marketing and your like personal status like very, very much. So be careful about that. Yeah, and just like a quick note on the Green Claims Directive, it will affect all kinds of voluntary, all kinds of claims you're making towards your product. That means like any kinds of visuals. So if you add like some green leaves to your logo, or so it doesn't mean that you have to lie in a sentence. It also is enough if you give your consumers, your players, the impression something is more green than something else. And here again, we need to be more responsible and create a common value system within the industry. So we, as an industry, know what does it mean for a game to be more sustainable. This is a question which requires to like grow up and take responsibility and like have the discussion. Yeah. So another regulation is the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive. This luckily will only affect like the really big companies, like Google, for example, or other platforms. It will affect you only, like not directly but indirectly, because these big companies, they have to look into their whole value chain and have to look at environmental topics, but also like human rights, and make a due diligence. So this is something which is already happening. You see that there are more and more like reports coming up, and of course they are also asking their subcontractors for numbers. So yeah, if you work with them, they definitely will also come to you. But this is something which still takes time. So we have like around 2 years there. I will show a timeline later on. So this is something what you should not be worried about at the moment, but soon. But something what you should be worried about is the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, the CSRD, because this is something which is already affecting companies. So for example, like wargaming, they have to report according to the CSRD already next year, based on their numbers of this year. What is the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive? It is basically on par with your financial reporting. So it asks you to report on your environmental impact, but also on your social and governance impact. And it is like in some European countries, so like it will be implemented in whole Europe, but in every country, of course, differently. But for example, in Denmark, if you don't do your CSRD reporting in time, you will not be able to sign off your annual report, and then you basically can declare bankruptcy. So it's a really, really important directive which you should be taking care of. And it is something which is evaluated by an external auditor. So it looks at your whole value chain. So you have to look at your whole value chain, which takes a really, really long time, and it affects. So on the one hand, you have to explain how your business affects the planet. But you also have to take into account how, like, the planet and climate change affects your business. So when we think of, for example, physical risks like floods or something, which happened in Europe lately a lot, in this report you have to explain, okay, how will this floods or heat waves affect your business, and you have to plan ahead and make sure that, basically you take care of it and reduce the risks. You also have to explain how you will decarbonize, like what is your plan to lower your impact on the planet. And the crazy thing is not many companies have thought of this at all. Which is insane, because like in other industries, it's really, really different. And it also includes Scope 3 emissions. Are you guys familiar with Scope 1, 2, and 3? Greenhouse gas protocol. Okay, so Scope 1 emissions. Wait, let me quickly check. No, okay, then I do it here. So Scope 1 emissions are if you're burning fossil fuels yourself. So for example, you are, oh God, what is a good example? If you, No. It's so if you're burning fossil fuels yourself, so for example, you give me a good example, Jiri. Come on, I have a brain.
If you have a fireplace, okay, I'm finished. Let's say you have a wood-burning sauna in your office, as many people do have in in Finland and you heat it up, this is scope 1 emissions. But you heat your offices directly by burning gas on premises, this is scope 1.
Yeah, so basically that almost doesn't happen at the moment. Scope 2 is when you hire someone to burn fossil fuels on your behalf for energy or heat. So yeah, like heating your office would be scope 3 and scope 2, and scope 3 is basically everything else. And at the moment, most of the companies only looked at scope 1 and 2, which is basically nothing. And they were saying, oh yeah, we're taking care of scope 1 and 2, we are really, really good. Surprise, like the CSRD, you have to look at scope 3 emissions. That means for the games industry, like your whole value chain, it means like your servers, your player data, also ads. So basically everything else what you can think of, you have to take it into account. Yeah, which will be really, really fun because at the moment we don't have data for that, but we will have to report on it. So yeah, how and when will this affect us? Here you have like a timeline and the different sizes of the companies. So at the moment, like until 2027, it will only affect companies based in the European Union. But after 2028, it will also affect companies from abroad. Here again, you see like the different sizes of the companies. So the smallest come like latest, but be aware it is a value chain approach. That means if you are like a small company delivering assets to a big company like Wargaming, then they might ask you for the numbers because they need to report. The CSRD, as said, has already started to affect companies, but the Green Claims Directive is at the moment implemented into national law, so that will take up to like 2 years until it's fully rolled out in the different countries. So yeah. Yeah.
Can you maybe offer some examples of what would it mean to be in the value chain of a company that has to report? Who's in the value chain?
Yeah. Yeah, so for example, if you are a small studio developing graphical assets, or like for a bigger company, then you will be affected as well because yeah, I mean, there are different service providers for big companies. So yeah, everything what is in the value chain has to be reported on. So, but do you have a good example?
What I was fishing for is just working with a publisher, for example. Yeah. So most of the European publishers are reporting on CSRD either in early 2025 or latest in 26, and they will be requesting this data from their developers whose games they are publishing. We don't know what's the extent of that, because the law just says that they have to report on everything that is material to their business, and they have to decide what they think is material, and then we find out if the auditors and if the people who actually apply the law, if they agree. But anyway, point being that if you work with a publisher, then there's a pretty high chance that they will ask for this data quite soon.
Yeah.
No,
all good. I mean, it's important. Like, I mean, here you can also see, so scope 3, there are 15 different categories which you have to report on, depending on if it's material or not. At the moment, as said, it's all over the place. Like some companies report, others don't report. The methodology is very, very different, so the data is not comparable, which is also like, it is really stupid because every company does the research themselves. They research like some emissions factors, they put a lot of money into it instead of getting together, sharing the knowledge and developing like a way how to deal with it. Yeah, so yeah, this is the current status, which again also we have the problem then to define best practices, because of course the companies which report on all the categories, they look really, really bad, because of course their emissions are really high, and the companies which decide just to pick like a couple of categories, they look really good, which is actually really bad. The CSRD is based on the ESRS, the European Sustainability Reporting Standard, which has around 1,400 data points. You don't have to report on all of them, but you have to explain why you leave out some of these. And this is what I mean, we as an industry need to get together to solve this, because imagine you have to do it by yourself within your company. And other, as said, like other industries have done that. Games industry, no, no, we are not there yet. Yeah. Yeah, can we safely ignore it until it goes away? Because like this is always the question, but as said, no, there are already small companies which are getting these questions from like the big publishers to report on these numbers. And also just to show, like we had the same question when it comes to the GDPR, where everyone was like, oh, we can ignore it, then nothing will happen. But the European Union is slow. Like, first of all, you think, okay, nothing will happen. But then, like 2 or 3 years later, they come and fine you. And this is what happened also with the GDPR. And this is the same what will happen with the CSRD. So we better get our shit together. And also, so the games industry reaches basically half of the world, you know, with the players. We are digital, like we basically have the numbers we need to decarbonize. So there is no excuse. There is no excuse to be more responsible. And now also we have the legal pressure to be different, to make a change. So like why we are here, I really would like that the industry gets together. First of all, we solve the compliance problem, getting then the data out of it, which we need to then really decarbonize. So for everyone, as like a little advice, please take the time, look at the CSRD, look what it means for your company, but please don't do it by yourself individually. Get together and like talk to us, so you can already look at the knowledge which is out there, so you don't have to do the research by yourself, but you have people who are already doing this reporting and developing the specific standard how to look at all these topics. Yeah, and as already said before, what we are doing at the Sustainable Games Alliance, we are developing a standard for helping games companies to comply with the upcoming regulations. So it's like really based on the regulations from the European Union. But the end goal is to use then this standard to get comparable numbers globally and define best practices, how to decarbonize. And then also put pressure on like service providers to decarbonize, because if like your service providers decarbonizes, it helps you to have lower emissions. And also like put pressure on like platforms or like, for example, Unity to be like more aware of this topic and design their products in a way that it helps us as an industry to decarbonize. Yeah. Get in touch with us. I don't know. Please add something what I forgot.
The SGA were really cool, and all of our members are really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks.
Thanks a lot. So yeah, we have time for questions. If there will be someone who is willing. Okay, so I'll be in this side, and maybe let's start from.
You start? Yeah, okay. You were mentioned that your group did estimations on carbon emission in the industry. I wanted to ask, what were the top 3 biggest emitters in your estimations?
Yeah. So it's basically the players playing the games. So the electricity grid, where they based, and it's also like the infrastructure. Servers or like the upstream and downstream of data.
So mostly like energy consumption.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I got a question. Got the question. Okay. Are European regulations comparable with American regulations regarding decarbonizing?
So the European Union is very far ahead. So they are not really comparable. No. I mean, they are comparable in a way because they're both based on the greenhouse gas protocol, but the Americans are far behind. The good thing is, though, that if you as an American company want to touch players in the European Union after 2028, you have to report as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
So if you're working with an American company, like even Epic, to use Unreal, how do you report if they're not reporting? Do you have to ask specific questions from them and get data that they don't need to provide otherwise? Is that sustainable? Also, if you release your game as a solo developer, like GOG, do you then have to also report as like a solo person? So this is the thing, because at the moment, yes, you would have to ask for the numbers. And the thing is, so for a publisher, for example, of course, it's easier to work with like companies or people who will give them the data. So of course you can say, look, I don't have to report, but they will prefer, of course, companies who can give them the numbers. Jiri, please feel free to add if you have, I don't know, like, yeah.
The simple question is that if I'm making game in Europe, based on American engine, which is in Epic, and this game made in American engine is touching European customers, so Epic has to report to European Union the data, and he has to ask us as developer for the data which we don't usually probably have. Am I correct?
Yeah, I mean, when I report my own data, I need the Unreal Engine. When I report the data, I need to report Unreal Engine that I use. But if they're in the US and they don't need to provide it, how do I?
They have to.
But do they? Because they don't care.
Have, wait. This is actually the funny thing, because like.
Can I jump in?
Because.
Send it to nerds.
Okay. No, good.
If it's okay. So in this case, as such, Epic doesn't need to report because, like, for you, it's important to be able to report on your end user emissions, and you can do this without getting data from Epic because you can measure the power consumption of your game regardless of which engine it uses, right? So as such, probably Epic doesn't need to report for your individual case, but of course, like it is also illustrating one of the challenges with this whole thing, that if I, as let's say I'm Paradox or I'm Ubisoft, and I conclude that actually Epic's emissions are material to the emissions of my game, now we are in an interesting legal dilemma, because like I'm obligated to report on this, but Epic might not be obligated to give me this data, and this is one of the reasons why the SGA exists, because like somebody has to have these discussions with, you know, with Epic, with Google, with Apple, with Sony, with all these non-European companies that sit on a huge part of the value chain. And maybe the single indie game developer can have that discussion with Epic, but I think it's not going to be super fruitful. But I hope that if, you know, we are successful and we sign up whatever 50, 100 European game companies, then maybe Epic will be a little bit more willing to give us the data, and then we can distribute it to everybody, and then it kind of works out. Yeah, because it's the same numbers. Everybody needs the same numbers from the same companies. So this is part of the work we're trying to do. Sorry that I'm hijacking your thing.
All good, all good. I mean, the crazy thing is also that at the moment you don't have a standard, so all the companies which have to report, they are also asking their service providers to report or give them the data in different formats. So imagine like you are a small studio, you have like 3 big customers, and they ask you for the same numbers but in different variations because there is no standard. So at the moment it's like really a shit show. So yeah. Yeah.
Thanks. Okay, question here.
Yeah, thank you. I'm also I'm curious about where the value chain ends, because if you use something like GenVid, let's say, and you have actually gameplay, so streaming and gameplay is intertwined. And the other question before that would have been, of course, is Twitch part of your, or streaming, etc., YouTube, whatnot, is that part of your value chain, or does it cut off the moment when it's the players expressing themselves freely, right?
Yeah, so you maybe can already imagine that the regulators on the European level, they really know how the games industry works, so they defined it perfectly. Yeah, so it's not defined, and this is like the problem. This is the problem because in the end, at the moment, there is no definition who will be responsible for it. And the most important thing is that we need to have this discussion, otherwise everyone will say, I'm not responsible, and then nothing will happen. That would be the worst. Yeah.
Any more? Yeah. And
it's also, by the way, very expensive. Like at the moment, like the Deloittes and KPMGs of this world, like they're earning a lot of money because it can cost up like from like 20,000 up to 500,000 depending on your size. Yeah.
For auditing? For auditing or auditing comes later? This is
just the reporting. And the good thing is, yeah, exactly.
But it's the other hand of the KPMG that audits you, so they might not agree, you know, and then you're gonna pay more.
Anyway, yeah.
I just wanted to ask whether your alliance also helps not only with reporting and regulation, etc., but also with how to make games more optimized, because what can be seen is that game is created, it requires so much resources, like the computer crashes completely, and that's the part also of the problem of consuming too much energy on a, I don't know, co-op game, Rogue. So yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, our goal is to really get the data and out of this get actionable advice for the studios, but really for the developers in there, how to optimize their games. And maybe you as an engineer here, please give like a better example. Here you go.
Hi again. As a former engineer, now I just send emails. Yeah, so the actual, sorry, I don't know who asked the question. Okay, yeah, cool. So the actual reason we started this whole thing was because we wanted to focus on how do we concretely decarbonize and really like learning and sharing that knowledge throughout the games industry. And as we were having that discussion, we realized that we don't have any fucking idea where the footprint actually lives. So we can't have a discussion about effective ways to decarbonize because we have no idea where to even start. So this is why we then decided to look at reporting as the first thing. But so Maria was talking about the impact and or the kind of how does the footprint, how is it divided? And it's really like, it's probably 90% of it is end user electricity consumption. So it's basically end user electricity, then it's the embodied emissions in the devices they use to play, then it's data server use, data center usage, then it's data transmission infrastructure, and then it's everything else, and everything else including, you know, the physical offices, the devices you use to develop games. This is, you know, whatever, between 1 to 5% of the total. So it all comes down to how do we make games more optimized, how do we make them more efficiently. And this is why I think it was a big deal for us to have David Helgason backing us from day one, because he is the founder of Unity, and I think that gives us a little bit more credibility when it comes to having those conversations on how much can you do as an individual game developer versus how much can Epic, how much can Unreal, how much can Apple and Google and Sony and Microsoft and all these companies do in their operating systems, in their game engines, in their data centers, because that's where the footprint lives. So I think our job is to first get the data so we can all conclude that indeed this is where the biggest impact can be. Then we push those companies to decarbonize, and then we start talking about like whatever green coding practices. Maybe we start a discussion on, does your game really need to run at 120 FPS? Maybe it can run at 30 FPS, or maybe at least you can make the player aware of the fact that if you run it at 30 FPS, you're actually saving, you know, your 75% of your emissions by doing that. So that's where we want to get to getting like giving very concrete, actionable advice on how to cut your game's emissions at the end user level. But it'll realistically take a couple of years before it's time to really talk about that. Sorry, that was a very extensive thing, but yeah.
Thanks a lot.
I mean, we actually are already having like meetups between our members, role-specific meetups where, like, for example, like where developers meet, or the people who have to do all the reporting, and then the communications people to talk about specifically that. Yeah, how do you make a change within your daily job and what you produce? Yeah.